Hello there. Hey, hello there. I am making art right now, and this video is to serve two purposes: to document my art process, and also talk about philosophy. Specifically, these are my little videos of reflection of what I learned during my modules in my philosophy course, philosophy of education. Our latest class was Module 3, where we explored Eastern and indigenous philosophies. And gosh, I love how people are finally, like, especially here in the Western sphere of the world, right? When we think about indigenous philosophies, we mainly think about the indigenous inhabitants of North America, right? For example, the Haida people of Haida Gwaii, who are indigenous to British Columbia. Oh, that looks nice. Oh my God, who's that ugly baby? That's me. I'm that ugly baby. Technically, I'm not supposed to add myself to this art exhibit, but you know what? They don't know that. They just see an ugly little baby. And I'm like, yeah. Anyway, a little off track, right? And, like, yes, there is beauty in listening to the peoples, the original inhabitants of the land that we settle on, right? But indigenous doesn't just mean one place in the world. Everyone on this planet, right? Unless you're a freaking alien, right? We are indigenous to an area of the planet. We're indigenous to a culture. We're tied to a land. Yes, we're not like connected to it. We may have forgotten our ancestral roots, or we have multiple, or we don't value it. But that's the truth. We all came from somewhere, someplace, and like, even though we forgot their names, the location itself, right? We still carry on those traditions, those beliefs embedded within us, right? Even though we forgot what they may be. It's something that we subconsciously cling on to and pass on, right? Because it's like normal to us, right? And in a way, that's how our ancestors have survived colonization, right? Like, it hurts to say this, but like, they have survived colonization by forgetting. However, they still practice. They forget, but they still practice. So even though the whole thing doesn't survive, especially as it was intended to, or like meant to be, a slice of it still survives, right? And it's apparent that, you know, their DNA, their history, their culture still survives because you yourself are made from them. So yeah, you're carrying on a legacy. And I think it's important for us to reconnect to our ancestry, to reconnect with our history, to reconnect to the pre-colonial. And oh my God, I'm tying this to my art, and this is what my art is doing right now. I'm connecting to my heritage and trying to learn from the wisdom that my family still clings onto, but instead of just like being like, that's the way my family does things, I want to know, like, where did it stem from? Why do we develop these beliefs? Like, is this the way of my people and culture? And like I'm also relating it to it, like how similar these belief systems are across the globe from different indigenous cultures. Like, we're from different places at different times and had different beliefs and languages, yet we all came to the same conclusion of interconnectedness, that there is more than just us, right? And that there's humanity, there's humility within all of us, and wisdom that we can gain from the past, present, and future. Oh my God, I'm so smart. Right? And the beauty of it, right, seeing how it also exists in Eastern philosophy, that not also exists, but I meant to say that there's a beauty of like how there's different perspectives and different ways of viewing, right, that aren't as rigid as what we have grown accustomed to when it comes to Western academia and philosophy and whatever, right? Right? We step outside of this perspective and go to ones that are very, very different from where it stems from. However, they come to like to similar wisdoms, just different pathways and ways of understanding to get to a conclusion, right? However, the conclusion isn't everything, right? You learn a lot more through the journey than just arriving there. And that's why I hate AI. That's why I hate generative AI, because it just gives you the answers willy-nilly and you take it as truth, right? And say you see it as like that's all there is to give. However, right, you when you question these things and you come to these conclusions yourself or like you generate more questions, it's getting to know yourself, it's getting to know more in depth about these issues and question why. Yeah, it's really annoying when a kid asks you, they're stuck in the perpetual loop of why. However, like in this childlike way of trying to like asking these questions, they're also trying to have a more in-depth understanding of why these structures exist, like who came to these conclusions, like because they don't understand it yet. Because like it's not an innate thing that you came to, right? Like these like universal truths aren't really universal, if you know what I mean. Right? And like it's good to question, because then you're like, is it really worth clinging onto these ideas? How do we develop it more? How can we have a more better way of expressing these ideas, these concepts, especially to our children, who we want to instill like certain values or frick, I don't know, into, right? And in a way, hold on. Yeah, it should be fine. I'll track of myself right there. But in a way, it's like learning from these kids yourself, because it really does force you outside the script of like a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and like and it equals like this variable, right? However, you can get to that variable with a different formula. I hate math. They keep changing math, but in a way, it's a great analogy for what I'm trying to convey here. Something that I really appreciate from Eastern philosophies, especially in Taoism and Taoist belief. Taoist and Taoist belief is how contrasted with the idea of like in Western ideas of like how you elevate yourself with wisdom and knowledge, and then like it's a thing that continuously goes up in progression, right? I like the idea of how wisdom and philosophy and knowledge is like a river. It is water. It is ever flowing. It's in fluxus. It's going down, but going down doesn't mean a bad thing, right? It's just beautiful to me, and it really paints a better I guess in-depth picture if you try to visualize it as like rocks, stones, obstacles as experiences, and see where or not you become you become stuck in it, or if you gradually like erode it through gentle contemplation, right? Like the water, or if you flow around it, right? I think that's beautiful. right? When it comes to like learning, it really is beautiful, and it paints a more clear picture, more in-depth picture than imagining things as a step ladder where it's very rigid, and it's only this possibility, la 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 la, A B C D E F G. But when it comes to a river, there are multiple possibilities, and it can consist at once, right? The stream is ever flowing. The stream goes down a waterfall, the stream turns into a river, the stream becomes a waterbed, the stream is a lake, the stream of knowledge enters like the ocean, which is like the collective, right? But we take different paths to get to the ocean, and then the ocean is not the only destination, because you think of the water cycle, right? Like the knowledge evaporates, I guess, in a way that becomes obsolete, but it doesn't go away forever. It re-enters the system, it gets reintroduced in different forms and different ways, and it comes back to earth, right? And it continues the cycle, but it takes a different path, right? It spreads, it flows, it dries up. Like it's a continuous cycle, and oh my God, it's beautiful, and it resonates with me, because that's how I view my spirituality. My spirituality has many similar beliefs to Buddhism, right? With reincarnation and the multi universe, and how your actions have consequences and all that, and like with rebirth, I don't see like, oh yeah, if you lived a shitty life, you come back as a fly sucking on like poop or whatever, right? I don't see it as just like a punishment. I don't see it as like something degrading to come back as a fly. I just see it as like you live your life in this vessel, in this body, because it forms, like, you see everything through your perspective, right? So it in a way is a framework of how you're going to see things in your perspective, right? And as a human right now, right, I think we're really lucky, because we have these abilities, at least to our knowledge, that we're the only ones to think in depth, right? And to interact away and like change our reality, right? Through imagination and spirituality and possibility and philosophy, of course. Ooh, that was a good one. All right. When it comes to my spiritual beliefs, when you die, right? Let's use me as an example. When I die, Lang dies. This experience ends. However, the energy behind me, the experiences, the lessons I learn, right? Those are one perspective, right? And my higher being, right? The thing that like the source of it all is trying to get to know itself, right? And it learned a little bit through me, because it is also me. I am also that higher being, but we're in different forms, and we coexist at the same time. It's very convoluted and very, very woo type stuff, and I would talk forever to really explain it. But that's like a similar idea to Buddhism, right? And like the being still learns. Just because you go to school once doesn't mean that you can't go back and learn something more new and in depth, right? And then I feel like reincarnation is like you have a different experience, you have a different life, you have a different framework and guidebook, right? And you relearn these lessons, right? The lessons of grief, the lessons of loving, the lessons of like going through conflict, the lessons of making friendship, the lessons of freaking learning math, right? Oh, I hate math, right? However, since one variable is different, there are so many possibilities. There's so many changes, even though it's just like one variable difference, right? And even though you in your previous cycle, you learn these like different things and you come away from it, in this new cycle, there are new perspectives, there are new avenues, there are new differences, and it contrasts or supports or it informs to the previous cycles or experiences, and you build off of that, right, in that life. And it's a continuous cycle of learning, relearning, deconstructing, rebuilding, and whatever. And like, I don't know, I think the best way to really get people to understand my outlook on my spirituality, or how I see this aspect, right, is like, think about how everything in the world, right, is built off of atoms, these tiny little things, right? and how scientists are you know, are studying atoms, right? We're viewing them, we're testing with them, right? And we're trying new things every single day, every single time, and trying to replicate things, seeing what little variable changes this, and that, right? And like freaking atomic bomb or something like that, right? The way I want to explain it to other people is just like scientists are atoms. They're made up of a billion, jillion, the freaking atoms, right? And you're still trying to learn from yourself. So I want you to view it as like your higher being, this consciousness, this energy, as like the scientist, right? And each little atom, each little experiment is just like that that your new life cycle or whatever, right? I'm kind of like losing myself right now. I need a nap. Yeah. Anyway. Ooh. Anyway, I really like Eastern and indigenous philosophies, especially since they're not very explored within Western philosophy, and I'm going to argue through colonization throughout most of the globe, right? And even now, places who birthed Eastern philosophy and held on to it for a really long time, right? They're forgetting the wisdom of these thinkers, right? Because they don't value it as much. They don't think it's as progressive as like the Western standard, right? And I think that's a shame. I think you can value both at the same time. You don't have to like bring one down in order to elevate the other, or like make yourself feel more important or powerful, right? And I think there should be a balance between it all, right? And when I think of myself as an educator, and not necessarily like a teacher that I get paid for, but like even at home, right? When I work with like the families I babysit, or my little sister, or when me and my partner fantasize about fantasize and imagine ourselves as parents, right? Because we view being parents as like being a teacher for life, right? To your child, right? We want our children to be mindful of these things, right? Because like in our families, right, education is like very valuable to us. It is the source of empowerment. It is something that you can't really, no one can take away from you, right? People have stolen, like taken away our homeland, our property, our lives, our livestock, right? They can take away our culture, right? They can take away like all these like physical material aspects. They can even take away our language, because you know, colonization and things like that, right? And then people can take away your values over time, right? And you just forget, and we don't think forgetting is something positive. We think forgetting is something incredibly negative, because when you forget, you lose, right? And when it comes to knowledge and wisdom and education, no one can take that away from you. Yeah, they can influence you. Yeah, they can like try to convince you to let go, but at the end of the day, right, you can't really lose it. The only way you lose it is by like avenues of getting old and your memory and your body failing you. However, subconsciously, those lessons of education, that knowledge, that wisdom still stays with you, even though it's not as clear or eloquently expressed as prior to your mind basically starting to disintegrate, right? And then the other way of how that wisdom dies is like, if you die, that wisdom dies with you. And in a way, trying to preserve it is by to pass it down to future generations, right? To our children, to our peers, to our friends, to lives and voices that 1,000 years away from, who live in a completely different world from where you live to now, right? And voices from the past, Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, the Buddha himself, right? Jose Rizal, right? And how do you pronounce his name? Lao Shi, right? And Confucius, and oh my god, what's his name? Geronimo, right? The like all these people, right? They died a long time ago. We don't know them. We don't speak the same language. Man, they lived in a completely different world to now. But their voices, their ideas, their wisdom still prevail. They still exist, and they haven't been taken away because they are that strong. They're that powerful, and in a way, it is like wisdom is eternal, right? Anyway, welcome to my TED Talk. Thank you.